Alrighty. Alright, so that's that. So let's do first things first. So let's put this on hold for a second, because we're going to start getting into Mongoose and how to save stuff to the database and all that. Let's jump back over here and figure out how are we going to save stuff. So we talked about how that save file was just a big string that's compressed, base64 encoding of a giant object. So actually, let's go into the storage manager and see if we can find out. Yeah, let's minimize this. Let's come into JS. Let's look at how RPGMaker works with this. So we're going to go through this really quickly so that we have an idea. So data manager actually calls the save function, but storage manager actually runs the save function. So storage manager.save actually runs the save function, and it passes two objects. So the save file ID and the JSON. So the JSON is that big object that I was talking about, and it eventually, that's backup. That's not what it is. Where are we? Yeah, save to local file. So it takes that JSON data, this LZ string compressed to base 64 is what I was talking about when it takes that JSON data and puts it into compressed base 64 format. Okay, and then this directory path, the local file directory path, and all that good stuff, just pretty much where to put it, what to name it. Okay, and then obviously load from a local file, very similar. Read from the file, decompress from base 64. Pretty simple stuff. But this save file ID, this is what I was talking about when there's multiple right here. So it figures out the local file path based off if the save file ID is 0, it says, okay, make it, less than 0, I'm sorry. So if it's like -1, make it a config.rpg save. So if you go into your options menu and you save and you go backwards, it actually makes a file that gives you all your config, which is kind of cool. It keeps that's how options are saved. So they're not device based, they're per device. You do an options base. So like if you're on a mobile device, you might have like always dash on, whereas on a computer, you might not need to. So we don't want to save this regardless. Okay. This right here is the global RPG save, which is the save file of 0. This is what I was talking about before, where the global RPG save is kind of how you view the load screen. So it tells you, playtime and number of characters that you have in your party, maybe your gold, that kind of thing. That's where this is stored. And then right here, so else, if the save file is like 1, 2, 3, it saves it as with a format of file1.rpg save. Okay, yep, and save file ID. And that is how it gets the local file directory. Cool. So that save file ID is very important when we go to the storage manager.save. Okay, so this JSON object is actually everything in our game we can recreate from this JSON object. Now, we could save just the JSON object to our database, but I think the base 64 encoding is just a lot smaller. I think it's kilobytes. It's a big difference when you start talking, you're saving everybody's games. It can get really, your database can get really full really quick. So we're going to keep everything in that base 64 encoding. And actually what I'm going to do is we're going to do something. This is something I was kind of referring to earlier. So we're going to sign in and just check the database. So what we're doing is instead of the normal, you have a load screen. So let's come in here just so we understand where I'm coming from. So normally, and yeah, I gotta fix this too. So normally you have this load screen where it has all the global RPG data stuff. I'm thinking for our purposes, we can actually simplify this. Let's make it so that players can only have one save file and they can only load from one save file. They don't get to see this screen, so we don't have to save the global.rpg save file. I say we just give them one save file just for us to move along and make this as simple as humanly possible. Once again, I mean, we should also make a way to save, the global.rpg save onto our database, and then have multiple save slots, and maybe even have a way for, let's say, like limiting save slots on the server. That way it doesn't take up too much space. But for right this second, I am more concerned with showing you how the database works and how to save stuff to the database, that I'm going to kind of gloss over this and say that there is no such thing as a load screen right now. So we're going to make this as if you can only save once and you can only load once. So we're going to say, so anytime you hit that save button in the game, so let's come into the game. We're actually going to rewrite the save class really quick. Once again, I'm gonna put this up, and we're gonna, you know, if anybody wants to update this after the fact, I absolutely encourage it. It'll only make you, it'll only make us all better programmers to you know, work on this after the fact. But for right now, when we hit the save button, instead of coming in here and picking a file, I say the save button just saves in the first, not in the first slot. It's just going to save directly to the server. So when you hit that save button, it's going to hit, we're going to rewrite the entire save scene to just say, hey, save it to the server. No problem. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to completely bypass this screen right here. So when we hit save, it's going to just upload it directly to the server. And then when we sign into our game, it's going to check to load our game. Okay, so this game end, we would eventually get rid of if we were to use this in like an actual setting. But that is the way that I am going to go right now. Okay, just so we're all on the same page. That's what we're doing. So we're gonna overwrite this save button so that it just saves directly to our server, and then it's gonna check our server. So it's gonna load from our server when we first start up the game. Okay, which will make it nice and simple and easy for us. All right, with that said, let's get in here. All right, so the first thing that we want to do, let's figure out how we're gonna do this. So if we just overwrite this method. Let's take this for a second. Let's think about this. Let's come on over here. And I want to actually make, they call it an alias in Ruby. I have no idea what they call it in JavaScript, so I'm just going to keep calling it an alias until somebody corrects me otherwise. Let's call this cloud save. Cloud save. Save alias equals. So for those who are not familiar with how this works, pretty much what I'm doing here is I'm doing what's called aliasing. So I'm storing the function into another variable, and then I'm going to call it later. Because I don't know what other people are using for this storage manager.save function. This has been known in an anyone who's been programming with RPGMaker should be very familiar with this concept. Almost every single programmer uses it. It's so that we all don't bump heads when we start overwriting stuff, so we don't overwrite things constantly. It maximizes compatibility with all of the scripts. It makes life so much easier in so many different ways. And the more aliasing you can do instead of overwriting a function, the more compatible you're going to be with other people, as well as people will not be coming to you as much for problems. So with that said, so we're going to take this. Let's comment this out real quick. So let's take this. And we're going to do a .call. The first argument is this, and then the next two arguments are the same arguments that we have. So save file ID and JSON. All right. So this will call the original function. Okay. I know how we're going to do this. All right. So we're going to wrap everything into an anonymous function real quick. So really quick, anonymous functions, for those of you who are not familiar with them, the main reason why we use it in JavaScript is to keep anything out of global namespacing. So that's the primary function for it. But I don't think we're going to be aliasing anything. I think for this particular scenario, we are actually going to overwrite things. Normally I would say make it so that you can call this in some way, shape, or form, but for our purposes today, we are actually not going to do that, which goes against pretty much everything I just said earlier. Alright, so let's talk about this for a second. So what do we want to do when we do hit the save button? We really don't care what the file ID is because we're only saving it once on the database. So it doesn't matter if you're saving to file 1 or file 10 or file whatever, it's just going up to the server. So really, we just want to post to our server already. Wow, it's quick. All right, so in the main core, I actually have a server URL. So if we take this server URL, all right, so we're going to use jQuery. For anyone who doesn't know that this is referring to jQuery, so we are going to go game network.server URL plus, and this is important. So we're taking the game server URL. Right now it's localhost, but if you were on like, NeldersonGaming.com or whatever your website is.com, this is where your main server URL is pointing to with the port 8000. This is from the main core is where this is pulling it from. Okay, so we're gonna call it /cloudsave because that's what we'll eventually call it /. So we want to post our save data to, so save to cloud, we'll just call it for right now. Okay, and we want to give it, we want to send it our data. Okay, now what is our data? Our data is equal to that compressed JSON. So really quick, let's look at that manager because there was that compression right here. No, that's backup, that's clean backup, restore backup. Where are we here? Save to local file. Okay, so data is equal to the JSON compressed. All right, so I think we can just literally copy this over and go over here. There we go. And since I have data and data, I think that is all that we need for this. Wow, that was actually a lot easier than expected. All right, since we're not going to be working on this and this, I'll keep this alias just for a second because I might need to use it later, but I'm going to go with, I think this might work. So we're just going to take the data, compress it to base 64, post it to our server whenever we hit that save button. I'm going to have to rewrite the save class to do this correctly, but yeah, I think this will work. Actually, I can do it from the main menu. Okay, we'll figure that out in a second.